Okay, so we can go live.
We'll start out with a quiz for you people. If you're paying
All right.
attention.
Right. I do need a quiz on this stuff. Totally committed to my.
Are we live? There we go. Okay, and everybody is in. They are all here. Okay,
Wow.
there's Emily. Oh, we've got a lot of background feedback somewhere. When you mute, we lose. Is Amanda Smith with you, Commissioner? Yep, okay. We're just trying to make sure we didn't recognize all the names.
I'm here.
All right. Okay. And Aaron is with you, whoever Aaron is. Okay. We're all back, and Commissioner, you're unmuted and the noise is gone. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm getting some feedback. I don't know if anybody else.
Everybody else is muted. We're not getting as much as we did.
Okay, I can hear you. As long as you can hear me, that's what counts.
There seems to be a background echo somewhere. But let's try, or we can have you go out and try coming back in.
We had to do that this morning.
You had to do that this morning?
Well,
How many committees?
for the record, Kevin Gaffney. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
ready?
Okay, the floor, we're ready.
Okay, for the record, Kevin Gaffney, Commissioner at Department of Financial Regulation. Looking forward to a new session, Madam Chair and committee. And some of you have heard from us earlier today, but hopefully we'll get more of a chance to see the rest of my team. And with that, I would actually like to have my team introduce themselves, and then I'll come back to me and I'll tell you a little bit more about my background. So why don't I hand it over to Emily Kosicki.
Good afternoon. I'm Emily Kosicki, Director of Policy for DFR. I have been with the department just over 8 years. I started in the General Counsel's office as one of the Assistant General Counsels. And some of you might have known me from back then. I was legislative liaison under former Commissioner Donegan in that role. And then spent 5 years in the Securities Division as Director of Examinations and Enforcement, and then transitioned to the policy role last January. And so I feel like I'm still getting up to speed, but I'm excited to start the new session and work with all of you. And with that, I will hand it to Deputy Commissioner Brown.
Good morning,
Okay.
everyone.
Good morning.
Hello. Nice to see some of you again. My name is Emily Brown. I am currently serving as the Deputy Commissioner of Insurance since, I think it was since May, as the interim. And so, but I think I've been in front of your committee previously in other roles on various insurance topics. So I'm looking forward to continuing those discussions this year and working with you all. And I think I'll pass it to Deputy Commissioner Bigglestone.
Hello, thank you for meeting today. I'm Sandy Bigglestone, the Deputy Commissioner of Captive Insurance. I was officially appointed on September 1st. And so I'm new to the deputy role, but not new to all of the inner workings of the captive division. I've been here almost in every capacity over the last 25 plus years.
Okay.
And Amanda?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Smith. I'm the Acting Deputy Commissioner in the Securities Division. I've been with the Securities Division. This April will be 13 years. And prior to my deputy role, I've been serving as the Registration and Administration Supervisor. And I joined the Securities Division after spending a decade in the securities industry. I think we have Aaron left.
Well, thanks, Amanda. My name is Aaron Ferentz. I'm the Interim Deputy Commissioner for the Banking Division at DFR. I was just promoted, I guess, a month ago. So I'm still new to this, but I've been with the Banking Division for 20 years. I was a field examiner for 13. And then I also led the examination team for 7 years after that. It's good to meet you.
Good to meet you.
And we'll have Sheila Grace introduce herself.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I have worked in the regulatory law field for approximately 20 years. During that time, I've been a hearing officer, a public advocate. I represented regulated entities, and most recently, I've been with DFR as an assistant general counsel for approximately 4 years before becoming the general counsel. So it's nice to meet you all.
Good to meet you. And I can see you a lot better on this screen than I could this morning. So this maybe because we had documents up and it was small screen when we were looking at you. So it's good to see new and some familiar faces. Okay, Commissioner.
So thank you. I just thank you I didn't allow the team to introduce themselves earlier today, so I just thought that was important. So for those of you that don't know me, Kevin Gaffney, I have been with DFR for 16 years. I was appointed commissioner in July of last year. As you see, there's a lot of folks on our team that have experience at DFR but are in new roles. So really in the last year, we have 4 new deputies and a general counsel and a new management information officer and a new director of policy. So with the exception of one, all of them were previously with DFR, but so familiar faces in new roles. I was appointed, I came to the department in 2007 after 23 years experience in the insurance industry in the areas of marketing, pricing, underwriting, state management, regional management. I came to then BISCA, Banking, Insurance, Securities, and Healthcare Administration. In the insurance division, I worked my way through a variety of positions in the insurance division. The department, is the chief financial regulator for the financial services industry in Vermont. Those forms of regulation vary by each division. So for the banking and securities division, it's a bifurcated regulatory regime because there's federal regulators and state regulators. We have federally chartered banks and we have state chartered banks and credit unions. So we have a bifurcated system there. And on the securities side, we license and we register investment advisors and IA firms, but there's also combined federal oversight with the SEC and other associations. For the insurance divisions, primarily the insurance is state-based regulation with some exception. The Affordable Care Act products, major medical, are still regulated by the federal government, but some of the other supplemental medical healthcare and disability products are regulated by the department. And I can just tell you that what I didn't share earlier today is that, the department had a number of legislative studies that they are delivering, and Emily Brown and Sebastian Arduengo, who's an assistant general counsel, and Emily Kosicki and others, consultants and the like, have been working diligently on a lot of legislative studies that will be delivered. Some will be delivered next week. Some are going to just take a little more time because of their complexity, but they will be coming in the coming weeks and by the end of the month, early February. And so there's a lot in the healthcare space that we've been tackling with studies, but we touch really all forms of insurance and banking and investment areas. The other division that some of you learned about this morning or already knew about is captive insurance, and Vermont is really the leader domestically and second globally in captive premium. And captive insurance is a form of self-insurance whereby a larger entity, like let's say a Disney, may have a large enough capacity to stand up their own captive insurance program to provide insurance products rather than going out to the commercial insurance market. So Vermont has captive licenses for companies, many in the Fortune 50, and really the leader. When we talk about captives, we use the term gold standard, and I won't steal too much of Sandy's thunder, but that gold standard means it's not chest pounding. It's what it is it's a high standard. It's a rigor. It is a discipline that the state of Vermont has followed since the law was passed in 1981 to allow for this mechanism, and we carry that standard, and we don't license every applicant. We do review those closely. We do add a lot of rigor in terms of our examination efforts, and that keeps that standard high so that those coming to Vermont are already serious about looking for an alternative mechanism to manage risk. So, and that brand, that captive brand, is important for Vermont, and it's important, outside of Vermont, because we know we're the leaders and we want to maintain that captive brand. If you forward to the next slide, you'll see the structure of the department, both the commissioner and the administration division in each of the divisions. And then if you forward to the headcount slide, you'll see the headcount for each of the divisions. It's rather stable between FY21 and FY22. There's 8 in the commissioner's office and 10 in the general counsel's office, 17 in banking, and 30 in the 2 insurance divisions, and 9 in the securities division. I talked earlier this morning, and I'll restate it again. The key to being an effective regulator is to make sure that we are right-sized for the industries that we're regulating. And what I mean by that is we have to be appropriately staffed to do the work that we need to do. And actually, when you are appropriately staffed, you can actually generate more revenue back to the state. And we can talk more, you'll see more in the slides as to what the DFR. Is there a question?
Yes, Senator Bray.
Commissioner Gaffney, quick question on finances overall. So are the fees that you all bring in as part of your regulatory work sufficient to fund the DFR, or do you get general funds? Are you a profit center for the state? I don't know how it works, and so can you give me a snapshot of that?
Yeah, that's a good question, and part of that we can talk about in more detail. I think I'll let Sandy cover that, but we are going to be asking for a increased contribution on the captive tax, not an increase to the entities, but just a proportional share that DFR needs is insufficient right now to properly service based on our staffing and resource needs. So I think the current percentage is 11%, and that'll be increased if it's approved to 13%. Is that about right, Sandy?
11% is what you keep. The rest comes to the state.
Correct.
The
So
ele-
you're
Yes,
very
11% is what we keep, and we are just needing a little additional of that. I can say with the increased revenue that we're garnering by the increased licensees, the net of that, even net of the 13%, is going to be an increase in general contribution over prior year.
And just a quick addition to that, we give up to 3% to the Agency of Commerce and Community Development to fund a position there to promote the captive insurance industry in Vermont and do marketing activities.
So I don't have any PowerPoint page in front of me that talks about finances. So to simplify the question, do you end up being a profit center to the state of Vermont, or do you balance it out so that you bring in just enough to finance the staff you need in order to perform your duties? How does?
Now, we bring in well in excess of the cost to operate the department, and the coming slides, Senator, will convey that. And if it doesn't, feel free to ask additional questions, but we will get to that in the coming slides.
Okay, thanks very much. My morning committee includes Department of Public Service, which performs regulatory functions. And so I'm trying to compare and contrast the two because they also have, increasing demands in terms of staff to perform all the regulatory work they are now responsible for.
And if you go to the next slide, it'll outline our purpose and mission. Well, one more. There we go. Thank you. So basically, this outlines kind of at a high level our purpose and mission, to make sure that consumers are treated fairly and according to the terms of the contracts and the laws that our regulated entities have to comply with. Also that we make sure that those entities are in sound financial manner and able to deliver on their promise. So there's two primary missions here: is consumer protection, making sure that the regulated entities operate within the confines of the law and the contracts that they write that are approved by DFR to use in the marketplace. But also that they're able to meet that promise. If you give a simple example of like life insurance, that promise, the premiums paid today, the promise is decades down the line. And so we want to make sure that companies that are doing business are solvent to deliver on that promise. And that there is kind of reasonableness in terms of cost for consumers. And that's the other component of the marketplaces. We want solvent companies, but we also want a robust marketplace, a competitive marketplace with lots of participants so that consumers have choice. And with enhanced choice typically means enhanced opportunities for more affordable costs. So some of you may be familiar that in the auto and homeowners markets, which many have either auto, home, or renters, or those products are delivered by many. We have a very strong regional presence by our domestic property and casualty insurers, but we also have all of the national insurers that you see commercials on TV, and that participation affords Vermonters very competitive prices. Our auto rates are 5th lowest in the country, and our homeowners are 10th or 11th lowest in the country. So that competition and that vibrant marketplace is also another mission that also provides benefits to Vermont consumers. Next slide, please. And well, this is just highlights the commissioner's office. I think we've already met everyone here. I don't know if I didn't mention Victoria Hudson is our new information management officer. So Victoria does a lot of work on communications, both through social media, on our website, responding to media inquiries and a whole host of items. And she's a new member to the team and comes with a lot of experience and has already provided a lot of value to us in that space, and will continue to do so. And Dave Cameron is our administrative services director, so working on the budgets and business and lease issues and just a whole host of things that Dave does to support the department. Next slide, please. Well, before we get to I'll hand it over to Sandy. I just wanted to quickly, just give you some examples of some of those activities that DFR does. And for those of you that were on this morning, it'll be a little bit repetitive, but I think it's important to note. Sometimes everyone finds out when DFR is doing something, when we have an order or administrative action or something that does garner a restitution to consumers, and you'll see those in these coming slides. But what you don't hear about is what doesn't happen. And and what I mean by that is about 6-8 weeks ago, we had to reach out actually through a representative whose constituent was an owner of a preschool who was having issues retaining their insurance, and they came to us. They came to us, a little late in terms of timing, but it was a Friday, and their policy was going to expire on a Monday. And Brenda Clark, our consumer services chief, and her team quickly, we're not the placers of insurance, but because we are a regulator that engages with the insurance industry and understands the marketplace, we were quickly able to, in about 3 hours, 4 hours, find a place for them to retain their insurance. And what didn't happen was their doors didn't close on Monday, that families didn't have to scramble for childcare, and employers weren't impacted because they did have to do that. And so it's just wanted to share that with you. And I'm just appreciative of the timely response of our team on getting that done. And that's just a small example of a lot of things that don't happen because our DFR staff is so responsive. Another example of just something that I think we want to do, find ways to support and educate and provide financial literacy to the marketplace, is a grant that we effected this past year to the Opportunities Credit Union that provided grant funds that at least 50% of those funds have to be used to support minority or women-owned businesses. So it might be that someone has a good business idea, but maybe they need some assistance in just how to run a business. And so we see that as an example of the type of things we want to do more to lean into to help support and educate. And really stepping back on that outreach and education, the whole department and all the divisions, I would say save captives, because captives, has their entities are larger entities that aren't really your Vermont consumers, individuals, and small businesses, but the other divisions collaborate together on outreach activities. And what we try to do is reach a variety of constituents, both vulnerable constituents like the elderly, and making sure that they are not taken advantage of in a variety of potential fraud situations. So just giving them the the power of knowledge. You know, consumer protection, as I talked earlier, can be affected by us enforcing the laws and the regulations, but it also can be by arming people with knowledge so that they can protect themselves. So we work with the elderly. We also look at the other end of the spectrum and look at young adults. So partnering with high schools, whether they have a personal finance program or not, trying to get into the schools and educate young adults as they either get ready to enter the workforce or trade school or college, that they have some foundational knowledge so that when they're, you know, get credit card offers and all these things and they're buying a used car and they want to finance it and now they have to get insurance for it, all those decisions that they have to make, they can at least have some foundational knowledge of how to effectively make those decisions. So those are a couple of examples. And then the other piece that's kind of related to outreach.
Commissioner, we've got a question. Senator Bray.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a quick question on the enforcement. Do you do all your own enforcement or do you partner with the AG's office? How do you handle that?
Yeah, we do our own enforcement. The things that we deal with are in the DFR purview. So we have a team of enforcement. We have a team of attorneys that work with each of the divisions on enforcement actions. But it is DFR. There's not you know, the AG's office has other enforcement activities that fall outside of our jurisdiction.
Thank you.
Can I add one thing to that? Can I add one point to that? There are times where we do partner with the AG's office, and that tends to be more complex cases. There can be overlapping jurisdiction under their consumer protection statutes in some areas. So examples of that could be like the J. Peak enforcement case, where we worked collaboratively with the Attorney General's office on various stages of that litigation. So we do work with them at times. And we also, in terms of like complaint intake, they have a consumer assistance program where they receive a lot of consumer inquiries across the state on different levels. And when that falls into an area within our jurisdiction, they refer to us. So we have a good working relationship with them on that front.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
thank you, Emily. I appreciate that.
If you're dealing with an administrative penalties, that's entirely in your office. But do you, if it gets into criminal charges, is that when you have to bring in the partner with the AG's office?
Yeah, we are not. We have civil authority within within Title VIII, but if there's anything criminal, that would not fall within DFR.
Thank you.
Senator
So,
McCormick. Commissioner, we have another question.
okay, I'm just seeing the screen and I can't see people. I'm sorry.
There are limitations to Zoom.
That's
continuing continuing the conversation on the same line. If something is criminal and is not in your shop, you hand it off to the AG?
Commissioner Gaffney, would you like me to Sheila to speak to?
Sure.
Sure.
That'd be great, Sheila. Thank you.
Great. So we actually have something happening right at this moment where we have a possible, through looking at an enforcement action that included our jurisdiction, we came upon something that appeared to be possibly a criminal issue. And so I actually did interface with the Attorney General's office, who actually said if something was criminal to actually reach out to, the FBI or the police. So we are in the process of doing that. So I think it is a matter of, trying to troubleshoot depending on what the particular matter is.
And if you're not the proper authority, you hand it off to whoever is.
And that's what, if the criminal never falls within our jurisdiction. And so we just try to find who the appropriate agency is that does have jurisdiction.
I was verifying that I had understood you properly. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And before I hand it over to Sandy, I'll just finish with, in addition to outreach, we have stood up for the last 6 or 7 years now, an intern program, kind of spurned from a program we did years ago that for our domestic insurers for their interns by educating them about what financial regulation is. And then we got the idea and we actually had a staff person kind of lead that effort and really reimagine what we could do. And her name is Pat Murray, and unfortunately we lost her yesterday after a long illness. But that program really has built a very strong relationship with our local educational institutions, our colleges, to allow us to bring in rising seniors for a very robust summer program. Each of the deputies will have them work within their division, get really good experience, do some real research, and then deliver a product at the end of the summer. In addition, the hope is that they, we want to try to retain as many of those graduates here in Vermont. So we try to keep them either in the department or in other areas of financial services if they have the interest. And we've been successful in retaining staff, permanent staff through that intern program. So that's something we're very proud of. I've had reach outs from other commissioners in other jurisdictions about our program, and so we continue to look at ways to grow that. So I will hand it over to Sandy Bigglestone to talk a little bit more about captives.
Thank you, Commissioner. Hello again, Madam Chair and committee members. I'd like to just briefly make some comments about captive insurance and the activities of the Captive Insurance Division. My role is to oversee the licensing and regulation of captive insurance companies that come to Vermont, and I should say choose to come to Vermont. Captive legislation by nature is enabling legislation, and at the same time has a pretty big economic benefit to the jurisdiction that enables the legislation. And so, captive insurance is really, as Kevin put, a form of self-insurance, but they do it through a licensed and regulated entity. And in most cases, it's solely the responsibility of regulation is solely by its chosen domicile. So here in Vermont, we have really proven to be a leader in that standard in the captive insurance world and regulation of that business over the past 41 years. The staff that we employ are really skilled at what they do. Captive insurance analysis and examinations is a very important feature to our business here in the division. And these people are coming to us from other areas of financial services, most often CPA firms or captive management firms, even with or other types of accounting and regulatory backgrounds. So they are quite critical thinkers, and we are constantly having to go through training and evolve as the industry evolves, because captive insurance can be innovative. It is the alternative market. It often responds and has solutions for organizations and businesses that need insurance coverage, but have challenging market conditions in the commercial insurance market. So with that, I'll give you a little bit of a profile that was recently updated because we just finished out the 2022 year. And we are in the top 10 of the highest growth years in all of the 41-year history, with 41 new captive licenses in 2022. In 21, we had 45 new licenses. So that is, we are growing, but we are also growing the premium tax base here. It is estimated that companies, captive insurance companies in Vermont will bring in over 31 million in premium taxes to the state for the 2022 year. We also have about 2 million in exam and registration fees for that business. The business of captive insurance, there is what we call an infrastructure supporting the business here, which also assists to grow the economy with 23 approved captive managers. Those are companies throughout Vermont that have bricks and mortar in Vermont and staff in Vermont. Some of the management firms are just a few people, and some have 50 to 100 people doing day-to-day work for the captives that we regulate. We have licensed 1,283 captives as of year end 22. 644 of those are active. Over the past several decades of this business, many companies, there can be a life cycle to owning and operating a captive. There can be mergers and acquisitions at the parent company levels. So that is why our active totals continue to grow, but there's a difference between the actual license totals and our active totals. The industry itself supports 400 plus jobs in Vermont. We are the #1 US domicile and second in the world in terms of premium volume. We attract companies that are on US domestic soil that have headquarters in the US, but also operate globally. So we do attract international companies very readily. We have about 50 companies just with parent companies in the European Union. And so we have won some US domicile awards and international domicile awards. And then folks in the Vermont industry have risen to their roles and provided leadership in their companies and have won individual awards as well. So all good things happening in the captive world, and I'm happy to take some questions if you have any.
Okay, Senator McCormick,
Thanks.
maybe we can put the screen down. I don't know who's running it, Jill or you. There we go. Now we can see people. Okay.
I served on this committee for several years and then I've been gone. I'm just newly returned. When I was last on this committee, I knew that captive insurance was just, Vermont had this great relationship with captive insurance. And my last year on the committee, there was some anxiety that other states had gotten the idea and that we were starting to get some competition and that our good relationship might be in jeopardy. And it appears that that didn't happen. Can you tell me how it is that we're still, we're sort of the capital, the captive insurance capital of the nation, how you have pulled that off? And also, really, why is that? What is it we're doing that others aren't doing, and how come they haven't figured it out?
Yeah, that's a great question. We asked that question, or we do not rest on our laurels. So part of the reason why we're still successful is the foundation that we have built, the great relationship, as you point out, not only with the regulatory division and other parts of state government and the infrastructure and the industry here in Vermont. you know, we're always looking for ways to improve, ways in which we can add value to the business that we have. I think that the reason why we're still in the lead is because we have standards. Companies that form and operate their own captive insurance company are doing it because they want to control their own destiny with some of their insurance coverages. It provides an incentive for them to control losses better in the first place because they're funding for their own losses through their captive. But having a captive that's run and operated, it does provide a level of accountability to their C-suite, to their boards. It provides a level of accountability to their stakeholders, not only to the regulators, but it is something that needs to be governed well and operated well in order for it to be successful. They're not trading dollars for the coverages that they choose to put in their captive with the insurance marketplace. There is a risk of loss. So I think that when you have the combination of experience and knowledge and expertise in a chosen domicile, and frankly, the track record of success, companies will choose to go there because they want the standards, they want to be regulated well. That said, there are 40 other US jurisdictions. There can be fierce competition at times. And so we are constantly involved in participating in activities outside of the state to share good practices, best practices, to share how we do things here, so that we continue to attract good quality business.
But why Vermont? What are we doing so much better than everybody else?
I
Why
think,
aren't-
yeah, I think partly it's that we weren't the first state to enable the law to allow captives to be domiciled here, but we were the first state to take the business seriously because folks and lawmakers such as yourself realize that there can be a true economic benefit. And so I think that still holds true today, some of those values and fundamentals of why it's important to the state of Vermont. In terms of what we're doing, we have probably the best captive insurance regulatory staff in the world. When companies choose to come here, and they encounter problems or they need approval, they get a response, they get attention. They have, our staff monitors what's going on with the company. They monitor what's going on from a holistic viewpoint, what's going on with the owner of the captive. They will have questions, so they get attention and they know that their business is important. They may not get that same quote unquote service in other jurisdictions because they just don't have the staff or the resources.
I was told in the past that the legislature is also very quick to respond to changes in the law that allow them to grow and to do different things. I can't think of a year where we haven't expanded the definition or the ability of captives to meet their needs, to do different things.
That's a great point, Madam Chair. And I don't know as if quick to respond is the right, everyone has to have their time to do their due diligence over any changes at any point in time. I think that what is understood is that the legislature is engaged and interested in the business and understands the importance of it as well. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I'll just add, because Sandy won't take her own credit, but it is really strong leadership. It really is important. Um, and Sandy has shown that. But I also think what Sandy said, we're not complacent. And that's why we typically have a captive bill each year, because we're always looking for opportunities to refine and tweak to make sure we're standing up the best regime we can, so we maintain those high standards. Um, so I think most companies looking for that alternative of captive insurance are looking for the support system and the infrastructure that is just well established here in Vermont. It's different than a company looking to be a domicile insurance company. Um, a captive company needs all the accounting and legal and regulatory support much more than just a traditional insurance regulator, because those entities already have all that within their business. Where here, it really is reliant on a well-established and high-functioning infrastructure, both within the department and within the Vermont community with captive management firms.
Okay, so Sandy, do you have anything else to add?
Well, I think, you know, from the past, I could probably talk about this for hours. It's a great industry, but I will save that for another time and in another place and let others speak. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so Commissioner, have you got,
So
Further
I'll hand it over to the Insurance Division and Deputy Commissioner Emily Brown.
Hi, everyone. My name is, for the record, Emily Brown, Deputy Commissioner of Insurance at DFR. So as many of you know, the Insurance Division oversees health insurance products, property and casualty insurance, including auto and homeowners, and life insurance. And really the two principal goals of the work we do and the regulation we engage in is really consumer protection, but then also ensuring the health of the companies that we regulate and those products. So I actually have two sick daughters at home, and one of them just started crying and yelling for me. So I really apologize. I'm going to actually pass it off to one of my colleagues. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's what comes in handy when you have a former Deputy Commissioner of Insurance. I could talk about insurance all day too. Yeah, so the Insurance Division also generates, as you'll see from the slides, a significant amount of revenue. You know, as I mentioned earlier, we have, for a small state, we have a strong domestic presence here of domestic insurers that are domiciled here. And then we have certainly companies, national companies that do business here. So there's a significant amount of premium tax that we garner. In FY21, it was over 37 million. And I mentioned Brenda Clark and the Consumer Services team in the Insurance Division, and they received a significant number of inquiries and or complaints, 15,000 inquiries and almost 2,000 complaints, with restitution of almost 3 million back to Vermonters in the last 5 years. We have both licensed Vermont producers and agents, and we have foreign producers and agents. So those numbers are in the hundreds of thousands, over 100,000 for the foreign producers and agents, and that generates a lot of revenue because there's in addition to licensure, like when you want to get a license, you have to apply. There's a small fee, and then there's another fee to renew every 2 years. But there's also appointment fees. So, for example, a producer in an agency, you know, just go down the street in Montpelier, and an agency there who's an independent agent may represent 10 companies. Those companies may even have other companies that, you know, a family of companies. So they could have 20 appointments for one producer, and each of those appointments garners a fee. So the appointment fees were biennial. Then they were increased in 2019 from $60 to $120. And then we would always have this dilemma with the up and down years with appointments. So in 2021, those appointments went to an annual cycle versus a biennial cycle. So now the fee got cut back to 60, but it's every year. So it's the same kind of double of what it was prior to 2019. But it's now a steady stream of revenue with appointment fees coming in annually. And that's every June we bill for those appointments. So that'll be coming up later this year. So yeah, the insurance division probably touches, you know, more Vermonters and individuals, because everyone kind of has these various forms of insurance, whether it's health insurance or supplemental insurance or disability insurance or auto or home insurance, life insurance. So they definitely have a direct impact. They're extremely responsive, as Sandy articulated on the captive insurance side. We have a very engaged staff and a nice mix. I didn't talk about kind of who we are, but typically we're a mix of attorneys, accountants, banking and securities, folks with banking and securities background. And so for the most part, it's a mix of professionals with industry experience and legal and financial staff. So that combination allows us to understand and enforce the laws, but also understand the marketplace. Because the one thing I always say to our staff is we can't sit in the room and machinate on issues without reaching out to industry and understanding what's going on in the marketplace. And I guess I'll just say, in that regard, the insurance industry on a regular basis will survey different aspects of the insurance marketplace where maybe availability of insurance is more challenged. So things like in-home daycare and vicious animals and pools and different exposures that not every insurer may have the appetite to write. We want to continue to monitor and make sure that there at least is continued choice, even if it's fewer participants in the marketplace. So that's something we continue to do and monitor on a regular basis in the insurance division. And I'll just say Emily's doing a great job leading the team in the division, and so very happy with her leadership. And I will hand it over to our newest deputy, Aaron Ferentz.
Thanks, Commissioner. It looks like we're running low on time, so I'll try and keep my comments brief. But just a quick overview of what we regulate in the banking division. Obviously, state chartered banks, credit unions, and trust companies. We also regulate entities that do bank-like things in Vermont. So we license companies that do mortgage lending and mortgage brokerage, companies that do mortgage loan servicing, and a few other industries. But the real growth area for us has been this area called money transmission. And that is companies like PayPal and Venmo. And then also an offshoot of that would be dealing with cryptocurrency companies. So you've seen the press a lot recently with the bankruptcies of really high profile companies. None of those companies were licensed in Vermont. We have stricter standards, but they did, unfortunately, they were engaged in activity in Vermont. So Vermonters have been affected by those. And we are hopefully, with the approval of the commissioner, going to be proposing some updates to our regulatory approach to money transmission, but also updating how we look at cryptocurrency activities in the state of Vermont as well. And then I guess the final good point about banking was that last year we chartered the first new state chartered bank in the state in roughly 40 years, the Bank of Burlington, which was a really exciting time for the department. Happy to answer questions if anyone has any.
Okay.
Yeah, Aaron, thank you for the comments about Bank of Burlington and all the work you and the team did to make that happen with FDIC and others. So that's a real important addition to the marketplace, an addition that can bring kind of local ownership and knowledge of the business community in Vermont, and hopefully provide a additional asset to Vermont small businesses. And I'll hand it, do we have time to hand it over to securities, Madam Chair?
Okay. All the time you need. Senator McDonald has a question.
George,
okay.
George Chaffee died last year. He worked with the Commissioner Jeff Johnson to establish captive insurance here in Vermont in the early 80s. Is Jeff Johnson still around?
Jeff is. I saw Jeff earlier this year, over the summer. Yep.
Yeah, he is practicing with Primer, Piper, Eggleston, and Kramer.
Yep.
Does he wear a tie these days?
Probably not as much.
I was at Centennial Field. He was not wearing a tie.
Okay. Senator Rahn.
It's hard to know exactly what to ask about cryptocurrency, and maybe there'll be, I don't know if it's legislation or a report that we can dig into more, but do you feel like there are major lessons learned for the next kind of fintech bubble that comes up, things that we can do to protect consumers earlier? Because I just feel like there's, there was an explosion of different crypto sites, and maybe this committee's already been
No, we
talking
have
about
not
that.
looked at crypto.
You say you
Yeah.
have or you have
We
not?
have not.
Yeah, I mentioned that we are proposing some updates to that. Part of that proposal would be increasing the standards that we would hold companies to. So that would increase their net worth requirements. It would increase the level of security that they're able to provide. And I'm sure we'll be happy to delve into those and later on in the session for any of those questions. Absolutely. And a lot of the proposal, it has been lessons learned as we've seen what happens when companies go through bankruptcy, what happens with companies that are essentially running a crypto bank that's unregulated, and how that's treated. So.
Yeah, it's continues to be an emerging issue. So I'll just say that, we continue to be focused on it. We did earlier this year try to issue investor alerts as soon as we became apprised of situations. So I think Vermont was out ahead on a lot of those notices, and but there's certainly more to stand up in that space.
Okay, other questions? Senator Bernie.
Just a quick crypto follow-up. In what way does Vermont have, it's unclear to me, but where jurisdiction centers, like the federal level or state level or a combination of the two? Can you just say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'll just say oh, go ahead, Aaron.
I was just going to say, under current law, if you're talking about a company that would like to allow customers to trade crypto to a Vermonter, they would need to be licensed by the state of Vermont Department of Financial Regulation.
And I would just add to that, it sort of depends on what activity you're talking about. So Deputy Commissioner Ferenc was talking about like money transmission, but then, there's ongoing conversations both at the state and federal level about like securities regulation and what entity it is that sort of has primary jurisdiction. So DFR is really actively involved in these conversations, on the banking side with CSBS, and the securities side with the National Association of Securities Administrators. So it's an ongoing conversation sort of across all levels. And, we're trying to engage on figuring out what the best approach is, but we do take the position in several areas that we have jurisdiction, like has been mentioned.
This is a new creation and we're still working out if it's fish or fowl, right? And who gets it? Okay. So we look forward to seeing that bill because I think this will be a new discussion for all of us, but definitely there's public risk out there. Okay. So we're going to securities if we have no more questions. Okay. Amanda?
So Amanda Smith, Acting Deputy Commissioner for the Securities Division. And what we do over here is we administer and enforce the Vermont Uniform Securities Act. And at a high level, what that means is we regulate the sales of securities and those that sell them within our state. And we do that through 4 key regulatory functions with the goal always of investor protection. First is through our registration efforts. Broker-dealer firms, I know some of the lingo I'm going to use might not be that familiar with it. Broker-dealer firms, sales agents, investment advisory firms, and investment advisory reps are required to seek registration in Vermont in order to conduct securities registration in the state unless they qualify for an exemption. So we have a robust registration program in place, and that requires the manual review of all of these registration applications. And our review is essential to our effectiveness as a regulator and serves to reduce regulatory risk in preventing bad actors from entry into the state. We seek to register high quality professionals, and we currently have 1,238 broker-dealer firms and 136,345 sales agents registered in the state. Additionally, we have 59 state registered investment advisory firms and 83 investment advisory reps collectively work for these firms. Now, I want to pause for a minute and give you a definition of this so it's not confusing. A broker-dealer is a person or firm that's in the business of buying and selling securities, and they charge a commission based on transaction. An investment advisory firm provides advice to a client about investments for a fee, typically based on assets under management. So our second regulatory function is through our exam efforts. We're the primary regulator for our state registered investment advisory firms. And a state IA is a firm that has 100 million in assets under management or less. So as the primary regulator, we're responsible to conduct routine exams of these firms to determine compliance with our regulations. So when we conduct these exams, we're seeing if they are upholding first and foremost their fiduciary duty, which is to act in the client's best interests, also operating in a sound financial manner, and meeting other critical operational requirements. So from 2020 to present, we've conducted 44 exams. Third are our investment efforts. The division will conduct investigations regarding matters such as mishandling of client funds, unregistered activities, or even allegations of fraud to determine if there's been a violation of the act. If there is a violation, we will use our statutory authority to issue an order, either directing a cease and desist, or we might issue a stipulation and consent imposing administrative penalties, fines, or restitution. So from 2020 to present, our enforcement actions have resulted in the receipt of 1.8 million plus in penalties, fines, and out of that 1.8, 191,509 has been deposited to the Vermont Financial Services and Victim Restitution Fund. And last are our efforts that we take on the corporate finance front. So a task of our corporate finance director is to assist companies seeking to raise capital in Vermont. So as an example, we will receive Vermont small business offering applications regarding an equity or debt offering. We review those to determine that the offering is not fraudulent and to ensure responsible capital formation. So from 2020 to present, we've received 6 local offerings ranging from solar field construction to enhancement and expansion of grocery store operations. So at the end of the day, everything we do, we strive to be an effective regulator to ultimately and always serve and protect the Vermont investor. Thank you.
Okay, questions? Senator Bray.
I don't have I can't remember the precise name of the program, but it seems like a number of years ago, we tried to do something in Vermont to let Vermonters invest in local businesses that were, I think, offering securities. I don't know if it was a startups or whatever it was. And I'm wondering, so I can't ask the question quite properly, but it was an effort, I think, to
Was it
help
angel investors?
people get involved in early
We did
stage
years
businesses.
ago, did angel investors.
And wondering, so one, I should learn the proper name for whatever that was. And the other thing is, I don't know if it's something ongoing and it's been successful, or if you can just say something about that.
Emily Kosicki, do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I think that this might be VISBO, Amanda, and Vermont crowdfunding. So that is something that's ongoing. It is something we do see, as Deputy Commissioner Smith said, a number is not a huge number each year of applications that come in. And with those, we do a deeper level of review than we do for other offerings that aren't specific to Vermont, sort of smaller or early stage businesses. But it is an ongoing program that we're active in. And if you want to hear more about it, we have a director of corporate finance who is really the expert and works closely with companies that are trying to do crowdfunding through that mechanism.
Yeah, thanks, Emily.
The other related question is, when some businesses in Vermont have gone the employee-owned route, and does DFR get involved in the transition from a privately held corporation to having it be an employee-owned company? Or does that happen outside of DFR's purview?
Well, I could say on the security side, we aren't involved in that. If someone else can I provide better guidance? I'm not sure.
Right. I mean, I'm thinking, for example, of King Arthur Flour, Pizza Galley Construction, there's others around. And I think the reason I'm bringing it up, the companies get, rather than stay in Vermont, they get acquired from outside the state, and sometimes we lose the companies. Whereas if they stay employee owned, they're almost always sort of wedded to the place, and we keep the company. So that's why I'm asking.
Well, I don't know if this gets to your question, but I think there is an ongoing dynamic in the entities we regulate with private equity. And so there is, but in terms of employee owned, I think, I don't think those generally will fall into our purview, but there are, private investors, private equity that is investing in ownership or partial ownership of insurance companies and agencies and the like. So it's certainly an area on its face is not necessarily problematic, but it's something we are watching closely, because what we want to make sure is that there isn't kind of a mission change there for the entity that would be at all problematic for consumers.
Commissioner, when you said private equity investment, it triggered. There's been concern about private equity investment in healthcare facilities. Is that something that you're watching?
We are. Yeah, we are. Certainly, again, that's probably the one that could have the what I talked about, kind of mission, the mission of a healthcare facility is generally a goal of serving the public, and versus looking at the aspects of that operation as profit centers or not non-profitable. So that's certainly something we monitor and we look at. We are That's been discussed and is continuing to be discussed at the national level. At the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. So that is certainly something on our radar.
Okay, I thought I saw Emily Kosicki raise her hand and then she disappeared.
I think she had to head out. I'm sorry.
Okay, all right.
It was a wave goodbye.
Yeah, okay. People disappear, I worry. Okay, yeah, keep us posted on that because I know it is an ongoing kind of discussion, and I assume if you think you need any legislative assistance, you'll let us know.
Yeah, well, we look at it from a number of vantage points. The one about the mission and what are the delivery of whatever the entity was doing has changed, but it's also the financials themselves, right? Because we're always looking at solvency. So we still want to make sure that the reserves and all the things that need to be in place to meet promises down the line, those things haven't changed. So that there's probably even more robust discussions about the financial components of that and the solvency piece.
So you, in the olden days, when you were BISHCA, you were involved in budgets and rate settings, and we shipped all of that off to the Green Mountain Care Board. So now in health insurance, you do, Emily, I see you've got your hand up, but what do you still do in health insurance?
Yeah, I'll let Emily handle that. I mean, I can say that the rate approval is done by the Green Mountain Care Board. There are some, but the solvency assessment and the solvency of our of the entities that provide health insurance are still evaluated by DFR. But with BISHCA, BISHCA stood for Banking, Insurance, Securities, and Healthcare Administration, and the HCA part of BISHCA, much of that is now with the Green Mountain Care Board and has probably been changed and expanded. But, things like certificates of need and all in hospital budgets, that's all with the Green Mountain Care Board, in addition to the rate approval process and the rate review process. But Emily can articulate that.
Yeah, so Commissioner Gaffney's actually absolutely correct. A lot of those functions move to the Green Mountain Care Board, but really the spirit of a lot of regulation in the commercial health insurance space still resides with DFR. So I think it was mentioned earlier about the Affordable Care Act. While the regulation of rates lives with the Green Mountain Care Board, we are still the agency or department that is charged with approving all of the major medical health insurance policies. So those sold on the exchange, the teachers' health insurance plans under VHIRE approved by us. We also work with Visters on their products. So there are a lot of other functions that still are with the department, as well as, and I didn't mention this, the enforcement of the Affordable Care Act. So while those regulations and rules are developed at the federal level, the enforcement of the Affordable Care Act lives with states. So we are, the main area where consumers can come to if they have complaints about their health insurance coverage. There's several other areas too, and new functionalities that we've taken on over the past few years. One of those is the regulation of third-party administrators, the oversight, as you might remember, of the association health plans, which feels like a long time ago, but that was an area that the department was tasked with overseeing. And then more recently, the oversight of pharmacy benefit managers, which is kind of a continuing conversation, and will be continued in our upcoming report. But there was legislation passed last year which gave the department additional authority over actions of pharmacy benefit managers. So while there are several pieces that moved, we still do have a lot of the job functions around health insurance in the commercial space that we did previously. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it's in a bifurcated system, it's good to know where you go with.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, one of the most important things, and again, I apologize for having to step away earlier, but it's the consumer protection piece that I think can be confusing to folks, because while everyone may think of the Green Mountain Care Board or the Agency of Human Services, if you have an issue with your health insurance coverage, whether that be your Medicare supplement plan or your major medical plan, you come to DFR, and that's where the complaints around those products go, and then are dealt with.
Okay. I had Senator Brock, he had a.
I do. And that is, Commissioner, as you look at all of the areas over which you have oversight, one of the most significant emerging issues or bombs waiting to explode that we should be aware of, and that you are at least thinking about, if not planning to deal with.
Okay.
Well, I'll stay away from the bombs. I don't think if the bombs got in sight, I would probably you would have known last year that I could see them in the distance. But I would say there's a number of emerging issues. I would say I just say technology generally is always at hand. And what I mean by that is the company's use of either artificial intelligence or machine learning to help them to more efficiently conduct various operations in their companies, whether it's marketing or it's claims or it's pricing or underwriting. And all that can add a lot of efficiency, but it also is being evaluated very closely to make sure that it's done in a fair manner. So I'm actually leading the work stream at the National Association of Insurance Commissioners that is doing a survey of the auto, home, and life insurance industry's use of artificial intelligence and machine learning in these various operational areas. And the purpose of that survey is to provide a foundational understanding for regulators so that we know how companies are using it, not just for our knowledge as regulators, but putting the companies through the paces so that they themselves are thinking about this internally, and that they have governance processes in place. And then that foundational knowledge is going to provide information to a number of other committees and task force. The Special Committee on Race and Insurance is going to have that access to that information, and that will generate some more pointed questions, I'm sure, on their part. The use of third parties. So some of this is garnered internally by the entity themselves, but a lot of this is brought to smaller companies through third parties who have these technologies, and they engage with. So management of third parties, governance of third parties. So that's one area. We already touched on cryptocurrency, and that's certainly an area that we know will need close scrutiny. We've already touched on private equity. I mean, one of the things I feel like, and I think Senator Rahm Hinsdale had asked me earlier today, is, who knows about you folks? And I think it's an area that I feel is still we haven't gotten there. We're never going to get there, but we're always going to strive for more Vermonters understanding who we are and what we do, because I think we can provide a lot of assistance, a lot of education. I talked about the reactive nature of consumer protection through our enforcement of laws and regulations and bulletins, but it's really the education piece, the areas, underserved areas, whether it's through language barriers or social inhibitors. There's much more for us to do. And it's not just us to do solely, but I think some of these are public-private partnerships. And some of these are interagency partnerships. So, you know, those are kind of the bigger picture issues on my radar that I think we have opportunity to do more.
That said, are there any skill sets that, as you look forward, that you think the department needs that perhaps it does not now have? And if so, how would you intend to address those?
Well, I'm going to get accused of using a senator as a shill, but we are looking to repurpose some positions in the insurance division, and actually it could be in the insurance divisions, that both captive and insurance. One of the areas, and as I talked about the complexity, it's not just through AI or machine learning, but it's a lot of different algorithms and a lot of different ways that products are developed. And so the area that we currently access through contracts is actuarial services. It's not the goal to replace the contracting services, but I think there's an advantage to having in-house staff with that expertise, not only for the here and now, but to memorialize and to have a kind of a continuum of knowledge in that actuarial space. And so that's one of the areas that versus, let's say, a rate and form analyst who reviews the filing, and then when the actuarial kind of detailed components of that gets handed off to the contractor, that we actually have someone in-house that can triage those and perhaps determine that we don't need to send it to the contractor. They can review it themselves, and also just stand up maybe more efficiencies in that area. The other area I would say is data scientists. I think it's that's a little different skill set than actuaries, but it is something that these are just examples of things that are happening in the industry and how the industry is changing. And so it's regulators are going to have to adapt and change accordingly to effectively regulate these marketplaces. So, you know, data scientists are certainly been on staff with many insurance companies. The Connecticut department did bring in a data scientist, and so we have some learnings from what they've been doing there in that space. And so that's not on my immediate radar, but it is something that I think we continue to think about. So the skill sets will change for sure. Yes, Senator Bruce.
Yes, thank you. So you're using a term I haven't heard before. Can you tell me what a data scientist is?
Oh, that's a good question. I won't probably give it justice, but I think a data scientist has the ability to take volumes of data and use that data to establish some predictive results that can be used to, you know, what the reason all these things are used by insurance companies is the key for insurance is if you can be more precise with what the cost of your risk is, then you can deliver it at a lower cost. If I right now say all the committee members in the room, it's going to cost, if I was the insurance company, $1,000 a year to insure your car. That's kind of a blunt instrument. That's not accurate. There's more precision in the risk that each of you hold as individuals. So if there's data out there that can create more predictability, then we can maybe say that some of you are 900, some of you are 1,050, And we can end up charging in the aggregate all of you less, but still do it in a profitable manner because it's more precise. So a data scientist helps with just analyzing large swaths of data and then converting that to kind of useful mechanisms to price and not just price. I mean, it could be to price, it could be to settle claims.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right. And you are finished with your presentation?
We are. We look forward to working with the committee this session, and I'm glad you got to meet the whole team.
You too. We'll have housekeeping as soon as it gets typed up and I sign it out. We're going to take up your housekeeping bill and get it on its way while we still have some fairly leisure scheduling for the next week or so. So we will be seeing you soon, I think. Okay.
Sounds great. Thank you, Madam